Okay, so Jim's here, Kevin's here, Lisa, Mike, and we're waiting on Gino should be momentarily. So we're going to welcome to the May 20th, 2 o'clock Littleton Board of Health meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes which will in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. Okay, so I guess first off, I would like an update from Jim Gareffi. There's a lot to talk about with all the governor's new opening phases going into action.
Thanks, Louise. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to try the share screen function. I may fail miserably, so I apologize in advance. It just makes it a little bit easier if I can show the documents I'm talking about. So, as I'm sure all of you know, on the 18th, the governor started the phased opening. And 2 hours before his press conference, we received this document here. Let me close it. So share screen. Share. Okay. We received this document, kind of guidance to how to enforce all of the phased openings. And again, I think I sent it to you, Louise. I'm not sure I got to everybody else. But it kind of talks about how boards should approach enforcement. It talked about what businesses can do, so who could open up on which days. It talked about enforcement of workplace standards. So, and I'll get into those standards in just a moment. So it talked about all of this stuff here, this enforcement I'll go into a little bit later on. It's talking about escalating enforcement and enforcement with the Division of Labor and Standards. So, you know, we are primary enforcement agents for it, and DLS can help us with that enforcement also. And this is what they want us to do. This is the list right here of how they want us to go about it. You know, verbal consultation. So education, as we've always spoken about, written redirection. So again, if they're not getting it when we talk with them, put the stuff in writing about where we believe that they're not following the rules, and get that off to them. Then again, there's always the option to do fining. And then cease and desist. So again, they want us to take kind of a stepwise approach to this. I guess the next document I wanted to put up for you, let me just, let's see. So that's that. Now I have to figure out where all my documents are. Yeah, I guess I'm not as sharp as I thought I was going to be with this. I had opened a bunch of screens and it worked the last time. So,
Jim, just sometimes if you have to switch things, you have to.
No, I had them in a different place. Thank you. Yep. So they're at the top. So here's the phased approach. So this is probably one of the best graphics I think that they've put together so far, so that you can see the whole picture of it. Everyone can see this, right?
No, we're still seeing a document.
Okay.
So you have to stop sharing and then share the other document unless you've been sharing your whole screen.
Okay. So share screen.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Good. Okay. There. Sorry about that. Hopefully we won't have to use this by the time I figure out how to. So can you see this now, the screen? The phased approach? Okay, good. So, and again, I think this is going to happen each time they phase us in. They're going to provide us with this document. Again, I think what's probably most important in all of this is this section right here about the social guidance. All of these things that citizens need to do to kind of cooperate with this, the entirety of this phasing process. This is how hopefully we're going to keep people apart, slow the spread of infection. Again, really, really important. And again, all of this is up on the mass.gov. It hit the Corona website, and then it's on the Reopening Massachusetts link. Again, lots and lots of information. So it kind of goes through all of the different businesses that can be open, worshiping. And again, these will be the guidances that we use as we go along. And I think Tim's going to come and talk to us a little bit later from Park and Rec about the beach. So that's a document that if anyone has any questions, you can kind of go to that and in a glance get a sense of who can open, what the restrictions are. So let me stop share that one. And let me try to share again. Okay. Trying to think where the other one was. So I have other ones that are open that on the bottom. Okay. Let's see if I can do this again. So I think all of these phases now are going to be predicated on this new dashboard. And unfortunately, I don't know, can everyone see all the numbers on it? Because I know mine, they're somewhat obscured. So this is part of the state's data that they report every day. And so these are the 6 standards, I guess, that the governor is going to be using to try to make a determination as to whether we can move forward in phases. And again, this is part of the whole big report that you're getting. And so they list the ones, they list the trends, and then they'll list the weighted averages so you can kind of see where things are going. So right now, the important stats that the governor's looking at seem to be going in the right direction. And I think that's what you're looking at with this little status here. You know, positive trends, things that are in progress. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have any negative trends at this point here. So if people are trying to get a sense of, where we may move to, I think this is what the state's looking at to try to make those determinations. And again, these numbers in these boxes here should change every day, probably closer to 5 o'clock now when they post the new information. And then let's see if I can figure out how to do this last one. All right, then we'll close. Then sorry, there it goes better. Share screen. So in that same, all right, so stop share. Let me reshare again. There it is. Okay. Can everyone see that? The mandatory safety? Okay. So if you go to Reopening Massachusetts, happens that are now can reopen. And for those that are already open, kind of go back and get it done. And each one of them has these mandatory safety standards built into them. So this one just happens be for office spaces. And so what they do is, this is the checklist one. There are 4 components to that mandatory safety standards. And what they've done is they'll do sector-specific ones. So the pool ones, they'll do one for construction, for and the cleaning and disinfecting components of that plan. So if you kind of remember back to the 11th, the governor put this phasing process in. These mandatory mandatory safety standards were an important part of that plan. What they've done now is, for the things that they're allowing to open, is they've developed standards, these mandatory standards for each one to reopen. That's a lot of information. I could go through bullet by bullet, but it's all up on the website if you want to take a look at it. These are the things that we're going to be using to work with businesses in town to determine whether they can be open in the case of the governor's list, and whether they're meeting these standards. There is no requirement for pre-opening inspections, and these processes are all self-certifying for the business to do. There is some postering that they need to do for their employees and for their for the customers, and there's some training that businesses need to do on behalf of their staff to make sure they understand what the company's protocols will be based on these mandatory safety standards. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I think it's a lot to take in. I'm sure there will be lots of questions.
Sure. I guess for the purposes of this, I wanted everyone to see that what's out there for information for us to use moving forward.
Now, I was listening to the Board of Selectmen meeting, and they're trying to figure out, the square footage and how many people can go back in that amount of square footage. So I think each business will have to individually ascertain what they can go back to.
So, and there was a reason I actually put office space up as one of these, because that took up at least 2 public health calls trying to figure out how you might make that determination. And so the standard that's in there for office space is 25% of the maximum occupancy level. And again, that's a calculation, I think, as part of the building, part of the state building code, or B, the business organization's typical occupancy as of March 1st. I would imagine in the case of the town hall, they use A, because all of the spaces have a square footage, and I'm sure the building inspector can, from the building code, kind of work that number up. Just because you have that potential occupancy, you can see, again, the social distancing is what's important in all of that. Not just that you have the square footage, but that people can keep that social distancing, or that you put other environmental controls in. So if you look down here, it talks about physical partitions, and must be separate workspaces. So again, it's not that simple as just square footage. There's other things that need to be considered.
Okay. Does anybody have a question for Jim?
Of course I do. Lisa,
Okay, don't fight over them all at once.
No, Lisa should go first.
Jim, I was wondering about the phases. There are supposedly 3 weeks, correct? And
that's what I've seen in the other document.
So if the numbers all go down, that's when we can plan to go on to phase 2?
Well, so that's kind of the implication in the background, is that they're watching the data. They've opened now. Let's give 3 weeks to see how this works out. I'm sure they're putting together the workplace safety standards for the other businesses. There's another document out there I can send it to you. I just got to find it again, send it to you, that has one of those colorful spreadsheets that shows all the 4 phases and what they're considering opening in those 4 phases. I hesitate to put it out there in general circulation, because then people figure, oh, that's what's going to happen. And it might, right. But I think what the governor was saying, if the numbers start heading the other way, he may pull back. And so I'd hate to get people thinking that on June this date, I can do these things. We're hoping that that's the case. And I think that's what everyone's striving for. Yeah. But we won't have these specific standards for each phase, probably until closer to those launch dates for the phases. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it going to be like a significant, if there's like a significant uptick, or just a minimal? Is it just the way the trend is kind of that? I guess that's what they pay people big money to do, to figure that out.
Yeah, and he hasn't, and in our public health calls, they really haven't given us a degree of if it goes up by this much or goes down by that much.
Yeah.
So I think I think trends, and that chart that I showed you with the trends, that is, they're starting to use weighted averages now in that dashboard that you saw, as opposed to just the straight averages. Because I think when they were using just the straight averages, you could see all the bumps, ups and downs. This kind of smooths it out and kind of indicates what we thought was happening with the trending down.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was rather struck in going over all the materials, including the details that the advisory board wrote up, separate from, in other words, that led to this direction. What's really striking to me is that a couple of things. I'm not trying to be negative. It's just striking that the very same techniques. This is a gigantic experiment. I wouldn't even call that. It's basically a very high a risk approach to opening, because the measurements that are going to be used are no different than we had a couple of months ago, which is how many people are testing positive and how many people are infected. It's going to be the usual stuff. Except we have the big difference is that people are going to be coming out in increasing numbers, or some number X. So therefore, since the number of uninfected people is very large in this state, I mean, very few, relatively speaking, relatively few people of the total population have the disease. So that means that a lot of people who do not have the disease are coming out in contact with others, some of whom may be carriers, some of whom may be recovering, but still shedding. I mean, it's a whole gamut. Yet there's been no effort made, as far as I can make out, of basically introducing a measuring using techniques and metrics that allow one to, shall we say, understand very clearly what's going on out there. Because the difference here is that there are lags of up to 2 weeks before you're infected, before you show any symptoms. So by the time you see the symptoms, shall we say, the virus, which is already out of control, goes out of control in a different direction. So from my point of view, I'm trying to be negative here. I'm just suggesting we should look at this as a high risk, not unreasonable, but a high risk approach to opening, because we're still flying blind. We still don't know what we're dealing with. So we have to be very careful, not just with this, but also thoughtful about the other stuff that comes up, including things like beaches, meetings, and all the rest.
I agree. No one knows what they're doing here, so we'll just take it one by one.
No, I mean, it's not just us who don't know what we're doing. It's everyone's flying blind with this. I think Jim in his in his, shall we say, usual moments will probably chime in and say, yeah, you're right, we're all flying blind.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I think we're trying to be guided. So that phase document that I put up, I think the important thing for making this work is that social guidance. So let's check and see how effective it is for us to keep doing the distancing, keep wearing the masks as we start to open up some of these other businesses. And I think, Louise, you asking, or I'm sorry, Lisa, you asking, whether will we go to the next phase? I think that's what they're looking for, is some kind of sign that the social guidance is getting through to people and is keeping numbers either staying flat or going in the right direction.
Right. We still need to be vigilant. But I think with all the phases, and I think with the weather and everything starting up again, I think that's going to be even harder to mandate and to what's the word I'm looking for? Us to control. So, but it is what it is. So. I know we're talking about not knowing what. I was just talking to a coworker today who had it, and she has the antibodies, but now her nasal swab is positive. So they had to talk to an epidemiologist because they don't know, does she need to quarantine for 14 more days, 10 days, what? But yeah.
So the current
So
state
nobody-
guidance, and that's why the antibody testing is a little problematic for us when we're doing the contact tracing. If all you had was the antibody testing, that just says you were exposed to it. And so
Not
the
necessarily
guidance
that you
from-
had it.
Yeah, the guidance from the state, the DPHs, those people we tell to, quarantine, to isolate and then go get a PCR, because PCR will tell us that you have it and then, or not have it. So if you don't have it, then we can feel comfortable that you don't have to be isolated and your family
Wow.
quarantined.
Well, we were together the other day, so does that mean I'm? Does
How
that mean I'm?
close? How close? Mask?
Hey, hey, Lisa,
No,
you now have a reason to be tested.
Yeah.
Well, if you're close contact, absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, they'd
Well,
probably
she's
love
gonna.
to have. They'd love to have you because they need tracing data. I got my syringes ready for you, kid.
I'm good. I'm isolating.
Kevin, do you have a question for Jim on this topic?
Not regarding this, no.
Okay. Gino, do
What
you have a
did-
question for Jim?
I guess I have another
Gino's
question
muted.
too. If Gino doesn't
Hold
have
on.
one.
You can hear me?
We can hear you, Gino.
Okay. I say I'll give you another couple of weeks. As long as people stay away from each other, like Lisa there, she should stay away from us for a couple of months. So, okay, Lisa. Sorry
We
about
were
that.
we were cleaning the office and we had masks on, so we weren't like so.
When you
but,
put your mask, wash your hands, you'll be okay. Couple of weeks, I'll give you a couple of weeks, and then we should have a meeting in a regular room there, because on Zoom, it drives me crazy, okay? All right, that's my thought.
I guess, Jim, I had a question. What would do they have plans for if there is an uptick, and are they just going to continue to? Will they go back, or will they just continue phase one? Is there anything written up about that?
Not that I've seen. So again, I think it's going to be one of these things. But if it stabilizes, maybe they'll keep phase one longer. If it drops, maybe they go into phase two. I think if I had to guess, I would say that's the way they're looking at the phasing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I have a question, not about this, but about something else, and I don't want it to get lost, because you did send an email out about the Pediatric Multi-System Inflammatory Syndrome. Could you talk about that?
So I don't know, it was a while ago, but okay. So there's these rare cases where kids seem to be affected heavily by it. And again, not a doctor, I have a sense of what they think it is, and that most kids seem to recover well from it. It almost seems like their immune system goes into overdrive, and that's what's causing these symptoms. But again, I know there's been a few deaths countrywide. I'm not sure how many, but in the state, last time I heard, there hadn't been any deaths, and the kids seem to recover. But it's considered a pretty rare situation.
And the symptoms are different than corona, correct?
I'm sorry. I wish I had known that we were talking about this. I might. Yeah. I mean, I think rashes is the big one that seems to tip them off on kids.
I thought I was, I just thought of it right before the meeting started, and I didn't get to read the email again, but I thought it was a bloody nose and maybe abdominal pain. I shouldn't even say that. I'm not positive.
I can certainly get you some more information about it.
Okay.
Because I know one of the emails that came out, they want us to, they want practitioners to be out on the lookout for this. I think that was the gist of the emails that were being sent out. They're starting to get reports of this. They want to try to get a sense of what the prevalence of this is. So they're really asking for people to report when they're seeing these symptoms.
Yeah, separate from corona. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, it is a viral. It is coronavirus. It's extra added stuff
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions for Jim at this moment?
Thank you, Jim.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're welcome,
thanks,
Gina.
Jim.
I was just curious
Don't,
the number of cases in town and what the trend is there as well.
I don't really have a trend for town. The cases will come out today, so we'll have today's most accurate. I think 94 was the last number,
Yeah.
the bulk of those being at Life Care.
I mean, we've remained pretty steady.
I think there were 2 new ones from last week to this week in town.
I think the last time I checked, we were under 100. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Would be nice to stay there. Don't go anywhere, Jim, because we might need you again. Actually,
I just want to talk about the beach opening because that's one of those
Yeah.
things. I think Tim from Park and Rec is going to try to join the Zoom meeting if he already hasn't.
he's here, so I was going to ask
okay.
him to speak next.
So typically what would happen in a normal year is that we get the applications for beach licenses because boards of health license semi-public and public beaches, and we would do the pre-opening water test and issue their license to operate. It's a little different year, so I asked because now the governor has opened the beaches as of the 25th, and he has provided that sector-specific workplace safety standards. And so I talked to Tim a little bit yesterday and said, geez, because of that, I think it really, and the board had a meeting today. If it would be really helpful for me to have you explain to the board what you're planning to do down there at the beach.
Okay, Tim, can you speak to that?
I can. Thank you for having me, Jim. And I just want to kind of give everybody kind of a little background on where we're at right now, because there's a little bit of a unknown as what exactly is going to be done. And I just want to make that clear from the get-go. So we do have a plan in place that would allow us to maintain the beach, enforce social distancing, and have people be able to utilize the facility that would meet all of the orders that were put forth. The one thing that I was kind of scrambling with Jim in the past hour and getting this underway is the Board of Selectmen. We had gone to them on Monday to, see what their guidance was or what, they might want to suggest to the Park Commission as far as putting things in place, because as everybody knows right now, the town is under a hiring and a spending freeze and all of that. So we don't have any seasonal staff right now. With that said, my understanding that I just talked to Jim is that we either enforce it or we have to hard close the beach and nobody can be there, which, I just would like Jim to reiterate to everybody, if possible, once that's done. But we do have a plan in place that we could essentially set up 12-foot distance boxes. I have signage that's going to go up as early as today. We are going to put cones in half of the parking lot because the guidance suggests that 50% of the parking lot should be shut down, and that should be kind of your base of your occupancy. It also states that you should have no more than 200 people per acre of beach space. Chris Stoddard and myself, we both ran different numbers, and we came up kind of with between 80 and 120 persons is what the beach could handle under the current government guidelines. The guidelines state that you have to have 12 feet of distance between each person who is seated on a blanket between the next person. And you have to have 6 feet of space, just like anywhere else, if you're, socially distancing. If you're seated on your blanket, you can be not wearing a mask. And if you're actively swimming, you don't have to have a mask on. Any other time you're moving throughout the facility, you have to have a mask on. The guidance even goes as far to limiting loading and unloading times to 15 minutes so people aren't loitering in the parking lot. The bathroom is, one person at a time or one family unit at a time. We are, kind of trying to figure out how do we get the restroom facilities open, or do we do porta potties, which is kind of where the guidance really leans towards. And, frankly, where we're at right now is I'd like Jim to kind of hop in here and say, we either enforce or we close, because based off of that statement, we just actually posted a special park meeting for Friday at 2:00, because once we get that official answer from Jim, our decision is going to be to shut down the park until the Board of Selectmen meeting on June 1st, or with the 5 full-time people that we have, do this enforcement, do these block times, and not charge until we get to our decision on what we're charging for memberships, and also go unguarded. But the people who would be managing the social distancing are all lifeguard and first responder trained in the event there was an emergency. So that is kind of where we are right now, and I'd like to hear Jim's thoughts or any of your thoughts on what I just said.
Go ahead, Jim.
So again, Tim and I just chatted yesterday. And there is very specific guidance for the beaches. I'm happy to sit down with Tim and review that, make sure it's all in line with the state stuff. I'm sure it is. Unfortunately, I think the enforcement piece of this, enforcing the social distancing piece of it's really important. And the fact that the people doing the enforcement are also guards, I think that's good, because I think that gives you the coverage as far as safety on the beach, not just safety from the virus, but safety from people in the water. This may sound horrifying. In the bathing beach regulations that the Board of Health issues their license under, there is no requirement for lifeguards. Certainly, if you had camp down there, camp code does require lifeguards. The bathing beach regulations don't necessarily do that. So if you need to have kind of a soft opening and you complied with the state's phasing guidelines, I don't necessarily see an issue with opening. Because right now for us, the social distancing piece is really the important piece. And porta potties, to your point, Tim, may be the better way to be able to enforce that, only one person in the bathroom at a time.
Correct.
So for the board, I mean, I'll have an opportunity to go through the stuff with Tim if they're in compliance, and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but if they're meeting the guidelines, then I don't see an issue with opening for Monday. And we're prepared to take the water sample tomorrow morning so that we have the pre-opening water sample. So
my question that I want to be able to clarify with our board in this kind of setting that we're going to do this, we're going to do this, is if these regulations are not in place, if they're not being enforced, then the understanding is the park has to be fully shut down. No one can be there, correct?
So I don't think parks have opened yet. So the beach area.
I'm referring to the beach area.
Yeah, the beach area.
Park.
So they need to be enforced like anything else needs to be enforced. So I assume your staff will be kind of monitoring it and checking people in. And to us, I don't know. So far, the public cooperation and compliance with things seems to be reasonably good. I mean, you go into the supermarkets, you go into stores, people seem to be doing the things they need to do. So again, I assume if your staff is down there and there's an issue with somebody not complying, a call to the police department would kind of fix that, if that's the case.
So right now it's being operated, and the request by the selectmen were to don't do anything, just let people show up whenever time of day they want to. And if it gets, if the need is to call the police, call the police. Is that something that could be allowed to continue after the 25th?
I'm not sure I understand what they're asking you to do.
The selectmen basically asked me, we have a joint meeting between FinCom, the Board of Selectmen, and our Park Commission on June 1st that was established. And we had on Monday, when the guidelines came out, gone to them and said, basically, here's the guidelines. This is what we're being asked to enforce. And the answer was, let's wait till June 1st. And until then, nobody down there, just let people kind of go about their business, and, we'll see what happens.
So I certainly couldn't recommend the board issue a permit if you're not going to comply with the guidelines for opening, because that's essentially what the governor's saying. In phase 1, we'll allow the beaches to open, and here are the rules to do that.
Okay. So my next question is technically there's still people showing up to Long Lake right now. Is that okay? Or should the beach be closed right now?
whether you look at it as any other parkland property that people are passing by, I think that may be I guess I would look at this as, recreational property otherwise. I don't know. What are you doing about the playground to keep people from being in the playground?
So right now it's got orange caution tape on it, but that keeps getting ripped, and I'm down there pretty much every day fixing it. So this afternoon I'm actually going to put blue snow fence around the playground as more of a more permanent barrier, knowing that the guidance is coming out effective Monday.
Yeah. Again, we could not issue the permit and people could still go down there, and whether you posted saying no use, no swimming, or police to take notice kind of thing, that kind of sign, until you actually have the ability to maintain the social distancing.
So
I'm not sure things change one way or the other. Are you saying you won't be able to have people down there starting the 25th, Tim?
So right now the request has been to not have anybody be down there until after the June 1st meeting.
Yep.
We are in a position that if the park commission had a meeting, which we posted for Friday in case we needed to, that we could put that plan in place and we can get, some of our people down there and to enforce some of this stuff. I think the question that they wanted to have me clarify was, can people sit on the beach and actively swim, or is it pass through only if we're not in compliance?
And again, to the board, I would say, to use the beach, you need a permit from your board, and without the guidelines in place in accordance with the governor's order, I'd say you wouldn't be able to issue the permit.
Okay. So people could walk through the facility, but they couldn't actually utilize the facility.
Like any other trail property in town.
Okay. All right. So that was really all my questions. The other thing, I guess that kind of fixes the answer to what do we do after the staff goes home? And I think the answer would be it reverts back to that, just like trails, people can pass through. Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine any town. Unfortunately, yours isn't kind of way off down a gravel road someplace or all in fenced. It's right in the neighborhood. So I guess we could say that nobody could be on the property, but how do you enforce that? So again, the message is, the beach is open from these hours, just like you are during the summertime. You'll have staff down there to make sure the guidelines are being maintained. I don't know what you do after the lifeguards go and the beach shuts down if people go swimming there.
They do.
Okay. But you don't go chase them off the beach, or the police don't go to chase them off the beach.
Yep. Okay. So at this point, like I said, we do have a plan in place. I would appreciate if you could offer, if you could issue the permit. And after our meeting on Friday, I am going to let our board know that these are our two options. We either close and it's pass through only, or we enforce the governor's guidelines. I will also pass that along to the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen, since we did have a brief conversation about this on Monday. And I will get back to you on Friday after 2:00 to let you know what decision was made for next week.
So Tim, can you send me what you've prepared so I can take a look at it?
I absolutely can. I just want to, I'm definitely going to, I will send it to you, but I'm going to give a call to our chair and also to Nina and just kind of let her know, because this kind of popped up a little quickly today and we were having some conversations based off of what were we going to do. But I did want to get on and just kind of get an answer to a couple of those questions because I had spoken to Mike Prue and he wanted me to ask those three things before we just kind of passed on not doing anything.
So Louise, to you, I don't know if the board is comfortable with, if I've reviewed the guidelines, issuing the permit based on the guidelines, based on the guidelines being in place, that the permit could be issued.
Why don't we take a vote on that? So does anyone want to make a motion?
Before we take a motion, could we have at least some feedback from the board?
Sure.
I'm not against the vote. I just want to make sure that, because there are a couple of things hanging in the air. Tim's done a great job of trying to stay within the confines. I just want to find out if people are picking up anything that of special note that maybe might help Jim and Tim and the board of and the Board of Selectmen look at this.
Go ahead.
Lisa, you want to go? Oh,
No, Kevin can go.
Kevin?
I'm on the call.
Did you say, Tim, was it 80 people are allowed on the beach or 100 people?
So the guidance right now is 50% of your parking capacity and no more than 200 people per acre, as long as the 12-foot distance between blankets was obtainable. So it's all of those factors kind of go into what that number is. Chris Stoddard, who's our civil engineer here in town, had come up with the number of 80. Depending on which area of the park that we used and how many parking spots we counted, that number could, be stretched probably up to 120 if you count it kind of the picnic area, not just the sand. So, that's the other thing. The other piece to this conversation that I forgot to mention is I did talk to our wildlife resource officer, TJ Connors. We do have the ability, and our plan was to post the motorboat ramp, which is state owned, as motorboat parking only. That would limit the amount of people in that particular area. And on Lakeshore Drive, the parking spots over there, we would post as canoe and kayak launch only, getting that group of people over to there, because we can't limit access because it is technically a great pond in Massachusetts, and that would be illegal. But the bathing beach is a completely different thing. So that would allow us to maximize that number of 80 to 120 users at the particular beach area.
Counting the, so that doesn't take into account the boaters, that number.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we move the boaters to those shoulder areas, it allows us to keep that number, because we won't have people just parking and going out on kayaks and canoes and taking up one of those units.
And to my knowledge, I've read that the virus does survive in the water. They don't know how long, but it's specifically more stagnant water, like the ocean, as it comes and goes. Maybe a little bit safer. And I don't know about the sand, but I guess we should probably dig into that, and no pun intended, and figure out what the situation.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. I don't like the no mask thing. I really do think
Did you plan that one, Kevin?
No. And I do think that the no mask thing, and I have kids, there's no way to control them, and even if they're asymptomatic, and you do the best you possibly can, I just think it's trouble. I don't know.
I think with the nice weather coming up this weekend, it's going to be inundated.
And that was part of the concern, is if the park's not closed and technically this enforcement order doesn't go until the 25th, how are we going to enforce that anyway?
Is that a liability on the town if we don't close the beach and people go there and something happens?
That's above my ability to answer. I don't know the answer to that.
No.
I just noticed that Nina just said, "Who knows?"
Yeah.
So that should spur a little caution in the air.
So,
Tim, I did hear the Board of Selectmen meeting that you did have an option for 2-hour periods that everyone could register for online or on Facebook or whatever. I forget what it was, but is that something that I think that's a good way for everybody to get a chance at being at the lake, rather than just people get there in the morning and claim their space for the entire day. Would that be Monday or not?
So it could be Monday. Unfortunately, Monday is a holiday. And if I can get this going because of the spending freeze, that was our ask on Monday, was supposed to be, can we get some money to get some staff in here so we can get this going? With that not happening, I'd have to do it with the full-time staff here. And, I know I could get myself in, it's what it is, but I can't enforce that by myself. And being a holiday, I don't know that I could get other staff members in there to do that, unless we were able to get some of our seasonal staff who we, have kind of waiting in the wings, ready to go. And even that's a super quick turnaround. To answer your question about my rec is, yes, we are set up. where normally people would buy a membership for the entire season and they would just show us our pass. They ding their pass in front of the scanner. It turns green or red depending on if their membership is valid or not. The added piece that we had suggested for this year for the equity part, because, normally I know my wife can't get out of the house before 10 or 11 with our 2.5-year-old. And just because you wake up at 4 o'clock and can get your beach chairs down there, that doesn't necessarily make it fair. But a lot of my colleagues in the area are putting in place either 2 to 5 hour blocks. So they either have 2 to 5 2-hour blocks, or they have 3 5-hour blocks that they're working off of. And the guidance kind of suggests that's what this parking lot turnover time is. I think it's for loitering and not having people just kind of hanging out, but also to help with the turnover idea. And basically what we would do is you would show your membership or you would show your resident ID, because one of the really hard things that we're going to be dealing with is, as Jim mentioned, our beach doesn't have any physical barriers like a lot of our surrounding neighbors and like a pool typically would have. And right now, a vast majority of the surrounding towns, because of budgetary reasons, have opted to close for the summer. So we're going to be getting a lot of out-of-town residents who we wouldn't necessarily see looking for somewhere to go. And without enforcement, this becomes a waterfall effect that would really become an issue. But what you would do essentially is show your beach membership or show your Littleton driver's license. You can do it right through the window when you pull in, and then you would show your receipt for your block of time. We would then give you a number. That number would correspond with the block that you had for your 2 hours, along with the number would correspond with the cone on the parking spot. Parking spots would be socially distanced. Your spots would be socially distanced. And then that's how we would run it. And that, was the best scenario that, like I said, we've been working with a group of professionals for over a month now. And that was really kind of where all of us landed, that this is the easiest, most equitable way to do it. But as I've said before, I am here to serve the community, and I will do whatever everyone feels best to not only be safe, but make sure that everybody is, the people who do feel comfortable and would like the opportunity are getting the opportunity.
So I just had a couple of things too. Full disclosure, I live in the neighborhood, and so this sounds very complicated and really does not sound like a day at the beach. I've understood that there's grids in the water, grids on the beaches to try and keep differences. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Tim.
Can you share?
If you're talking about, if you're proposing motorboats versus kayak launching, there is really no good side. It needs to be improved if that's what you're going to call it, and we're going to use it for that. It's like a pallet that's fallen apart. I don't go there. I use it to walk my dogs. I use it for the kayak occasionally. I know Louise and I used to take our kids there when they were little. I don't think I've ever remembered seeing 80 plus people at that lake. Could be wrong, never counted them, never had to. And then the other thing, if you can talk to, and it may be just way more than you can talk about right now, but what are the options for Camp T? Because I know that they go there. When Camp T is there, there's definitely more than 80 people. So it may not even be something that we are ready to talk about today, but just I know you're thinking about it. So that's just what I just, restricting it to the neighbors, restricting it as a, membership. My kids were little, we never had that. So, and I understand it's different now, but this just sounds really complicated to sign up for your 2 hours and stay in your square. And there's kids running over blankets and running in and out of the water and running to the wrong blanket because they don't know where they are. And I think it's going to be really hard to enforce, but that's just my opinion.
So, yep, I do agree with you. As far as like the ability for the enforcement is going to be tough. it'll be easier if it's has some sort of a setup system rather than just kind of
Loosen up.
free for all, if you will. I don't know if Jim can let me share my screen. I can kind of show you the.
Tim, can I ask a question here before you go into the plan? The plan and following the procedure that the Baker administration has put together is not an issue here. For me, at least, the real issue is putting an onus on, shall we say, staff and people to behave in a certain way. And I think that's asking a lot. But let me ask you this. Do you know of any not neighborhood, but any pond type area similar to ours? Similar to ours. It doesn't have to be next door, but similar to ours that either is definitely announced that they're going to open or something close enough that has pond as opposed to ocean. What I have in mind is why run an experiment if we don't have? Why do we have to sort of do a Wild West thing when we don't have to? It would seem to me that closing the beach sends a very clear signal that it's not the safest environment to ask people to behave in. Not the best environment to do it because of it restrains people from bringing their kids with them. I have no idea, and teenagers or people with teenager type brains are going to do down there.
Mike, I have to interrupt you because
Sure.
I apologize, but Jim Gareffi needs to leave for another meeting. So do
Yes.
we want to get his, he was asking if we want to allow him to make a decision about this without having to meet with the board again. So can we
Sure, I have
take
I've
a
noted
motion
it.
on that?
Sure, why not?
I'm sorry, Mike.
No
I'll
problem.
make a motion. I'll make a motion for Jimmy to make a decision. Gino.
Does someone want to second that?
Well, is that, I mean, what if that decision is, like Mike just said, to not open the town beach? Is that what we're motion, would Jim consider that as
Well,
an
so
option?
I guess what I'd be doing is looking at the state guidelines, looking at the Park and Rec's plan, and if they can enforce that plan that they have, I would issue the permit because they would comply then with the governor's order, and then it's the issuance of the license then. So I guess that's what I'm happy to review it. Happy to work with Tim if there's any things that we need to change. But I guess what I need to do is make sure you're comfortable with that being issued. If they can enforce the plan they have and they have the plan that complies with the governor's orders.
I feel like that's okay and for Jim to make the decision and then it's up to Tim to enforce it.
So just to be clear, I would then go back to our board at this 2:00 meeting on Friday and say our options are to either hard close the beach because they have care and custody of the beach property, or we have to meet this regulation that we gave to Jim. And then based off of that, Jim would give us our guidance. I would give it to them. And hopefully, we might get some suggestions from what the Board of Selectmen want to do. And based off of that, those group of people would make either decision to close the town beach effective Monday or put the plan in place to open the beach under the guidelines that Jim approved for our permit.
Okay. Does someone want to second Gino's motion or?
I trust Jim in anything that he would decide, but I think like Mike was saying, kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, with all the regulations that you're going to have to enforce at this little tiny beach. So I'm not sure what to do.
High risk, no reward.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the end of the day, that was what I was saying. Right now, I think what we're asking is to get the permit approved and then let the powers that be, which is the Park Commission and the Board of Selectmen, make that decision because they're the ones who are charged with making that decision. That's not even myself.
Okay, the problem I have, that's all well and good, except that unfortunately this board's responsibility is to evaluate the health issues.
Right.
Right.
Not the social or the other political and, recreational, which are, I mean, this is not fun. Okay.
So I think that if we have Jim assess the health issues and for the permit, and he can make the decision whether to approve the permit or not, and then the Board of Selectmen and your board can take that and decide what to do with it. So does someone want to make a motion for that?
But I think that, I don't know, my leaning would to just not open it for health purposes. For the unknown, like Kevin was saying, the water, the sand, contamination, that would be my leaning towards not even opening it. But I think you guys are talking about giving a permit to open, not giving our opinion as to whether it should open or close.
I have another question. Is the urgency to open by a date certain the issue, or is it really that we should perhaps not wait for the sake of waiting, but see what happens to the other aspects of the opening of the state in their phase one? And we don't have to wait the full 3 weeks. What harm would be done if we see if people have an opportunity to adjust to, shall we say, the modified life regime under phases? I mean, this is not Florida on the beach or California, Malibu. This is a pond in a small town, and and as Tim pointed out, which I'm glad he brought it up, that all the towns around, I'm not sure what's happening at Walden because I don't know who runs Walden for sure anymore.
PCR.
We're going to get hit if we're the pond that's opened. And not necessarily with munchkins, but with teenagers and adults and all the rest, because, sand and water is very attractive. I totally am sympathetic.
No, I think chlorine and fresh water from now on.
Okay. Well.
Or a pond, right?
Okay, so Jim
sorry,
Garepi has to leave. Jim Garepi has another meeting, so we need to stay on track here a little bit. So,
All right.
You can let me know if you want to discuss it more. Just let me know afterwards.
Yeah.
okay, sounds like we need to discuss it more.
I think you want to sell the passes, right, Tim?
No, so that's honestly, it's what I kind of let off with Jim. Right now we have, in what my feeling was, we have two options. And those options are we become compliant and we do some level of enforcement on Monday or Tuesday, or we close until we make a decision on what we want to do. But to leave that property open and just let whoever come there without any type of order from anybody is that, because the other thing is, and I said this to my board earlier, essentially it would be like giving a kid a candy jar and then in a couple weeks trying to say, well, no, here is now the rations or here's the regulations, and changing it. And that would be really, really hard to go back on.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what's happening right now, where it's open with no regulations.
And that's the issue.
And
I was
restrictions.
down there with the police chief and with the deputy chief, and it was a mob scene.
Nobody's in school, so they got nothing to do. So
Right.
But you also don't have the manpower. You can't hire anybody yet to go down there and enforce it.
And right now, until the 25th, technically, the order can't be enforced. It's not something that, the 25th is the date that the order is put in place.
All right. Tim, I'm sorry. Just one technical thing. What comprises a hard close?
Well, that's what I'm asking you guys. I mean, because right now, technically, people are only supposed to be able to walk through the park. They're not supposed to sit down. They're not supposed to set up shop. That's the way that the order is written right now. And right now, people are flocking there. They're sitting on the wall. They're in the cars. A closure would be, to enforce that you can walk through. There's no swimming. There's no sitting on the beach. There's none of that until we figure out what to do. I think that that was really what, I think we need to make the decision on right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'd make a motion to keep the beach closed until we get to phase 2 or figure out a plan of what we're going to do to keep it safe.
I second if you want to close it.
Well, I mean, just so you know, we were leaning on trying to, put some sort of enforcement, because the other piece that the conversation is, if you close everything, people are going to go swimming in these other places they can't, and the risk of, people drowning and people doing things go way up. So that's another piece to think about, because if people start jumping in these backwoods ponds and forge pond and places where they wouldn't necessarily swim,
I can't get stupidity, I mean, we're just trying to keep public health at a reasonable level.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Tim, can you limit it to Littleton residents only?
We already did that a month ago.
Okay.
Our park commission, and we put up signage and everything to that effect.
I think Gino seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we want to vote on that motion, please?
I hear the motion again, just to make sure that,
I'd make a motion to keep the beach closed until we get to phase 2 and or figure out a better way to handle it when we have full staff in place, and we get some, maybe, and I'd like to add to that, maybe get more information about how the virus lives in water and sand.
That's it. I second it.
Okay, so let's take a roll call. So Gino,
Second, Gino. Yes.
Kevin,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Lisa,
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Louise Nichols, no. So that's 4-1. So, okay, are you all set, Tim?
To be clear, what does that mean? Are none of the boards have a say in what they're going to do with the property right now? It's just there's no permit effective the 25th, and it's walk through only, no sitting on the beach, no swimming.
Yes.
Correct.
I mean, what we're basically saying is that if folks are supposedly following the phase 1 rules, and we're trusting them to use good judgment, they're going to use good judgment, we hope, while the beach is, quote, technically not available for guarded swimming.
Right.
Okay. And if it turns out that folks behave differently on the beach than they would, let's say, on other locations, that informs the town.
So we have that going on right now, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. The beach. So right now, under what we just said, we have to go down to the beach and kick everybody off, and it's packed right now, and so we're taking away everybody's ability to have the option to go to Long Lake, where what we were trying to say was we want to be able to enforce the social distancing under some sort of a plan. And that was why I was preface this was, we only had an hour to prepare for this when Jim called us and asked us to hop on. And I just feel like it's a larger conversation that needs to be had with especially the Park Commission and the Board of Selectmen, because am I going to put on the signs that the beach is now closed as per the Board of Health?
And can we have a group meeting with Park and Rec and Board of Health?
I mean, we just filed a meeting for 2:00 on Friday. I could say 3:04. I could probably say for 3:30 on Friday if I can get it up to Diane right now.
Yeah, why don't we do that, a combined meeting?
If you guys are okay, I would ask that we at least get that opportunity, because I can tell you from the amount of meetings I've been through about Long Lake Beach in particular, that this is going to be a very, very, very hot topic. If that's just kind of the blanket guidance that's handed down and it's everybody off the beach until phase 2.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to, Kevin's motion mentioned phase 2. Wait until phase 2, which will be 3 weeks from now. Do you think that you can figure something out in the next 3 weeks? Or do we want to try and talk this out starting now?
He's asking for us to join their meeting Friday afternoon to start now.
I know that, but Kevin's motion was to shut the beach
Yeah,
But
it
Tim
would-
is already open and Tim wants to shut down and, but Kevin wants to shut it down until phase 2, which will be 3 weeks.
So to be clear, I didn't want to shut down. I just wanted to enforce social distancing.
Kevin, that was a motion that Kevin made, was to shut it until phase 2. No, I know you want to open it. I know you want it available to, permitted residents. So,
We don't even need it. That was the thing. It doesn't even need to be permanent right now. If you're a Littleton resident and you want to come to the beach, we just want to provide everybody a safe opportunity.
but you are talking about red and green light to get in. Is that like, that would be ultimate, or are you talking about doing that now? And reserving 2 hours at a time in 12 feet, between 6 feet and.
you know what? It sounds like we need more discussion, honestly.
Yeah.
So why don't we try and have your combined meeting, Tim, if you could change the time so that we could join your meeting on Friday at 3:30, did you say?
Yeah, I can get it upstairs before then. In the meantime, I'll send you over everything that we've had an opportunity to kind of put forward and look at. If you have questions, please send them to me so I can kind of get that stuff worked out before. Now, my other thing is, based off of the motion that we just made, for the next 3 days, what is everybody comfortable doing?
Okay, I am comfortable with relying on Jim's interpretation and his experience, but I don't know if anyone wants to.
I am also reliable. The question is, I will be able to be on the meeting.
If it's packed down there right now, I'd like to make a motion to have the Littleton Police Department go down and get the crowds moving. You know.
Well, that would be fixed by the Park and Rec's solution of the 2-hour time slots.
But that wouldn't go into effect until Monday or Tuesday if we did that. So right now, technically, it's either we just allow it to continue and, unchecked, or we put up signage, which we were planning on doing today with the governor's rules and allowing people to kind of do what the Board of Selectmen wanted and just kind of, hey, here's the guidelines, please follow them. And if you don't follow them, then the police enforce it. Or did you guys want to, make that closure effective until we reconvene on Friday?
Okay.
I was thinking it'd be effective immediately.
Let's have another motion.
All right. So I hope you get this right. I make a motion that we post the beach area with the governor's directives, asking people to adhere to it. And we provide, and it's, as you know, it's a discretionary thing on the part of the police or anyone else required doing enforcement, to provide education first and use what we'll call more stringent methods as a last resort. And please, somehow or other, I'd like to also communicate in the motion that the people's behavior will guide any next steps taken in regard to the beach. In other words, what we're interested in finding out is how do people behave when they go to the beach, with just simply the guidelines posted.
Okay, can we get a second on that?
So 1 second. So follow the governor, keep the beach open, following the governor's guidelines of 12 feet between blankets and continuing 6 feet apart, correct? And
Correct.
with enforcement by police?
Nothing any different than we have right now for everything else that we do. I mean, we're not the enforcement agency. Remember, that was delegated to Jim and the police.
Yep. All right. I'll second what Mike says and scrap that first one. I think we do need to. I think it's going to be really hard to enforce, though. I just think it's going to be really hard to enforce.
It will be very instructive.
It will be, and I think it's going to be a learning experience for everybody. And
Yep.
maybe you'll have to tailor it as you go along.
And I actually, Mike, forgive me. Did you say that depending on how people are, like you said, behaving, and if they're not behaving within the governor's, if the police are getting called a lot or there's not a lot of compliance, then we leave it open to closing it at some point if people don't follow the guidelines?
Yeah, I'd like to just make it clear that further, instead of hitting people over the head, make it very clear that using common sense and complying has its own rewards. Let's put it that way.
And so we can also add to your motion, Mike, about
Yes.
Jim Gareffi going down and okaying the permit.
No, because the permit has a totally different effect.
Okay.
Need a roll call on that motion?
So Lisa, you seconded it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call. Gino,
Yes, Gino.
Kevin,
No.
Lisa,
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Louise Nichols, yes. Okay. You all set, Tim?
I am. Thank you guys for your time. And I know this is all fast coming at us and very difficult. I will send over all of the guidance documents I have, along with everything that I've given to the Board of Selectmen and my board to make educated decisions on this stuff. And then I will post the meeting as a joint meeting on 3:30 on Friday. And hopefully we can have the necessary conversation to decide at that point what the plan is going to be. And to Kevin's point, if the Board of Health recommends going to phase 2, at least the people who are elected to make that decision are the ones who can speak on behalf of that decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for all your help.
I really appreciate you.
Good luck.
Can you work on that kayak launch?
So just so you know, the dock that I was going to put in, the dock that's normally in the middle of the beach, the kids swimming dock, that's going over to Lakeshore for the kayak launch. That was part of the plan.
Yeah, because the kids were not socially distancing on any kind of docks. That's for
Correct.
sure.
So since I eliminated all the docks this year in part of my plan, that dock was freed up to become the canoe and kayak launch.
Okay.
But you have to wear shoes on it because there's no skin contact on the dock.
Right.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. I will see you on Friday.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye.
Never mind.
Okay. What do we have next? Is there anybody, Janet, is there anyone in the attendees that has a question? Or I know Alex McCurdy wants to add.
Yes, one question by Marianne Greenier.
Okay. We'll take Marianne's question and then we'll go to Alex, please.
Hi. What I understand is that right now there should be no one on the beach, that the beaches are closed. So if it's crowded down there right now, then in fact, it should be cleared because across Massachusetts, the beaches are closed until the reopening on the 25th. Is that not true?
Yes.
And so why is no one sending the police down there to enforce the rule that exists right now that the beach should be cleared?
I know that Tim just said that he goes down there and clears people away. I don't know why he hasn't sent the police down. Maybe they are and he didn't mention it or we haven't heard about it.
What I took away from what he was saying was that he thinks that the people in Littleton are allowed to be there, although they're not swimming, that they can still be on the beach. I worry about that. And also I worry about the fact that, as Kevin brought up, from what I'm reading, we really don't know what happens on still water with this virus. And I don't know what other people's experience has been the last couple of weeks, but my experience has been incredibly negative about how people are behaving in stores, how they're behaving on the the trails in Littleton, etc. So I just would ask you to be conservative on this. And people are, yeah, they're bursting at the seams, but the worst thing that could happen is that we do an opening too early without adequate staff, without adequate funding, and then we, as a result of opening too early without everything in place, we have a spike, and that certainly is not something we want. So I just urge you to be conservative and extraordinarily careful, because we just don't know what this disease will do. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mary Ann. Yeah, you're right. We definitely do not want a spike in town. Okay, how about Alex McCurdy?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, I can start my video now. So just a quick update. A while ago, I told the board that we were working on upgrading the EDS plan. I've had quite a bit of input into that from both Jim, Scott Wazinski, and a fair amount from Mike too. Just to let you know where that is, because right now doing vaccinations is a big deal. It's in the news, and they're looking for a date at some point in the future. We have gone through a couple of drafts, and we're coming very close to having a document that will go out to all the stakeholders for review. And the goal that he and I share, and I think everybody else does too, is to have this plan updated and ready to be put in action after having an exercise to see if it'll work well in time for whatever rolls out in vaccination. May or may not be needed, who knows? But at least we will have our plan updated and in a semblance of ready to go. So you all will be seeing this fairly soon. This is pretty fast paced for typical plan development like this is. So.
Okay. Did you have more, Alex?
No, I think that's it. I just wanted to give you an update of where we were. And, we are shooting for a full exercise by, like September of a plan that's executed. And I will say that this plan is going to be leading the way for a lot of plans in a lot of places.
Okay, so that's great to know. Just the Board of Health would, be glad to help you out, and please obviously keep us updated. So thank you so much.
You will be here. You will be seeing all 99 pages soon enough.
Great. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Alex? Looks like we're all set. Thanks for coming on, Alex, and updating us.
Thank you.
Okay, Nina, did you have anything, or are we all set with you?
I don't. I assume that the board has heard about the annual town meeting decision, but I'd be glad to update if you didn't discuss it at the beginning of the meeting or otherwise.
We have not discussed it yet, but I would appreciate you to update us so that everybody knows, just in case.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Board of Selectmen met at their May 18th meeting on Monday and discussed the annual town meeting. There were a number of different things that the Board of Selectmen took into consideration. While, not necessarily directly discussed, there were materials in the packet for the Board of Selectmen that the board took into consideration relative to the drawbacks of not having an annual town meeting before June 30th. While that is an option, it does push a number of different things into a bit of a holding pattern and create some obstacles that would be pretty challenging. I know that some communities across the Commonwealth are electing to push their town meetings into the following fiscal year, therefore after July 1st. But we have the fortune of Alumni Field, which could provide seating for at least 300 residents, and would also provide potential adequate standing room for social or physical distancing of attendees and voters. And there is going to be more information made available as we get closer, but the actual annual town meeting date has been set to Saturday, June 13th at 8 a.m. And there is a rain date. It is technically not considered an official rain date. It doesn't happen automatically, in other words. So if it does rain, the moderator and the town clerk would physically have to go down to the Alumni Field, open the town meeting, and then postpone it. But the postponed rain date town meeting has been scheduled too, and that is Sunday, June 14th at 11 a.m. Certainly, we're hopeful that between those 2 days, we are able to conduct the business of the town in anticipation that there is some significant level of uncertainty as to where things will be in fiscal year 21, post July 1st. We don't have any reason to believe at this point in time that large gatherings are going to become safe, so to speak, now or later in this immediate future. But by taking the steps that the Board of Selectmen have taken, and by following guidance from the governor, the town clerk, and a number of other people, our town moderator, our LCTV director, guidance through Jim Gareffi and Chief Wodzinski, there is a reasonable plan that has been laid out. And if residents in the public would like to look at what that might look like, I would suggest that they look at the memorandum that was prepared by our town clerk and our LCTV director, Mark Crory, Diane Crory and Mark Crory, which is in the Board of Selectmen's packet on their page under agendas. I should also note that we appreciate, just while we're at it, very much the school department's assistance in this process, because they're obviously paramount to helping us make this happen. There will likely be some pretty detailed logistical procedures that attendees will have to follow. And again, those things haven't been fully ironed out yet, but there may be restrictions on which gates people walk through based on last name. There may be restrictions on what you can bring in. There certainly will not be, there's a certain type of chair that can be used on Alumni Field, and we have 300 of those. So there may be priority seating for those who require, the elderly or anyone else who requires seating. But some of those details are yet to be ironed out, but at least we have a location, we have a suitable venue, and there are a number of departments who are working on ironing out the details to make this event as probably quick as conceivably possible and as safe as conceivably possible. We thank the Board of Health for your attention to the subject as well. I know it's a challenging one, and we don't take it lightly.
So Nina,
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
The last meeting that we had, and any questions about town meeting came up, we talked about temperatures. Mm-hmm. That's what our only motion that we made was taking temperatures, and it was going to be at the middle school gym. Is that still something that we're going to do, or do we have to do because it's outside now, or was that something that Board of Selectmen didn't think needed to be done?
Admittedly, we didn't discuss that level of detail on Monday evening, but I do anticipate that those discussions will come up as we work out more details. And I, I think, I don't think we did have some minor discussion on masks, but all those pieces need to be pulled in and finalized.
The other thing too is that both of those dates will be way into phase 2, so things might look different then too. Obviously not our vigilance or anything like that, but
Definitely what is going to be allowed might be different after the 8th.
Right.
And the meeting starts at 8 o'clock, but I heard at the Board of Selectmen meeting that 7 o'clock you will allow people to start entering and checking in.
Mhm. That's correct.
Okay.
Anyhow,
That will take a longer process, I'm sure.
was anything happening? Soccer, is soccer happening now or baseball? Are there there's no sports, right?
At this point, there's no sports to my knowledge.
My kids are older. I don't know soccer. I didn't know if the town sports were still happening.
Not to my knowledge. I believe everything is all part of the, I mean, as it stands today, you can't have a gathering of more than 10 people, with exception of the legislature. So town meeting is exempt, and part of that is probably the state's understanding that town business somehow needs to continue in order to have, in order to follow the legal procedures to adopt budgets. Obviously, we don't want a situation where the voters aren't given the opportunity to decide on. We want to avoid that if at all possible. The voters are given the opportunity to decide on what the fiscal 21 budget looks like.
Mike, you have a question for Nina?
Well, there was a discussion of mask and temperature. I'd like to point out that the mask is very effective indoors or outdoors for preventing folks who are carrying any kind of disease and who are unknowingly or knowingly infectious from easily spreading it. So I think masks at the town meeting are probably very important because you're going to be there for more than 2 or 3 minutes, more than 10 minutes, my suspicion. As far as checking temperature is concerned, it's probably the crudest, and about the only thing we can do is to make sure that no one enters the area who unknowingly or knowingly is ill. And that, again, that has nothing to do with being indoors or outdoors. Excuse me. So I'm hoping that the board of selectmen, wow, pollen in the air. So those 2 items I'd like to see discussed and implemented.
Right. And I would, on that end, I would say, you've taken if I recall correctly, and as Lisa referenced, you've taken a motion with regard to temperature checks. It may not apply as much here because now we're on alumni field because your motion was specific to the gymnasium and the indoor facility. Perhaps the Board of Health would like to discuss these specific logistics and provide guidance to the Board of Selectmen, or if you prefer that we work directly with Jim Gareffi, I'm happy to, make sure we do that. But if the Board of Health has direct guidance, we would be glad to take those things under advisement and implement to the degree that the Board of Selectmen doesn't have further questions and wish to discuss it as a joint meeting, for instance.
Well, I'll make a motion that we recommend that temperatures be taken at any venue selected by the Board of Selectmen for the upcoming town meeting.
And mask?
And mask and temperature checking, yes.
Okay, can I have a second for that?
And social distancing?
I think
I'll
that's
second that.
part, okay. Okay, so let's take a vote. Gino? Gino, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, Gino, what's your vote? Can you say your name and how you vote, please?
Yes, Gino.
Kevin? Is Kevin still there?
I don't see him.
No, Kevin left.
Okay, Lisa?
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike?
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Louise Nichols, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Nina.
Sure to carry that message forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, are they going to have, is highway department and school department, who's setting up and breaking down for you guys?
At this point in time, I honestly haven't reviewed emails in that level of detail, but I'm sure those details will become more clear over a period of time. We actually, I'm happy to report that the town meeting warrant actually went to the printer yesterday. I said warrant, but I meant the town meeting report. And the town meeting report went to the printer yesterday. It was proofed today, finalized. It will likely be on our website before the end of the day today, which doesn't leave a lot of time. And then we will also post the town meeting warrant, which is, I don't want to say a formality because the warrant is actually a legal document, and the town meeting report is, while very legal too because of the town's bylaws, it's not the one that actually calls the town meeting. And so we've been very focused on getting those documents finalized and making sure that we have our ducks in a row. But there are a lot of staff who have been working in the background. I just haven't had the opportunity to get into those details with them.
Great.
And a total other topic, graduation. I know they're not going to have it, but if the chairs are out there for Saturday morning at 7 a.m., they're going to be up. The 300 chairs that are on for some sort of a graduation ceremony of, you know, some kind of a virtual or some kind of
Lisa, you're
obviously socially distanced. I mean, it just makes sense. Maybe they can piggyback on something like that. And I know, totally off the subject. You know,
I mean, I think the only thing that I could say here is that until the governor's order is lifted for 10 gatherings of 10 or more, I think that the same the same order applies, whether socially distanced or not. I don't believe that there is a provision to allow a graduation until such time that that order is increased to a larger number. But I'm sure the school departments looked at it a little bit more closely, and maybe they would know of legislation that I'm not aware of, perhaps.
I was forgetting about the 10 or less. I was just thinking about the space. So
sure. Yeah.
All right.
okay. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you all.
Are there any other questions, Janet, from any other attendees or?
I don't see any hands up, Louise.
Okay, so can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, so let's do the roll call. Gino,
Yes.
say your name and vote, please.
Yes, Gino.
Kevin is not here. Lisa,
Yes.
say it again, Lisa. You were.
Lisa Flanagan, yes.
Mike, is Mike here? Yeah, Mike. Mike, are you there?
He was muted.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just, Louise Nichols, yes. So that's three of us. That's a quorum. Oh, is that all right, Janet?
It's good. Yep. Hopefully he didn't pass out.
I know, he was coughing a lot.
All right,
Right.
I'm more or less back. Sorry, guys. Really apologize. Believe it or not, I'm trying to do another Zoom in another part of the country. So it's an emergency. That's all right.
Okay, that's okay. We're looking for to adjourn. That's all.
Oh, wonderful.
We had a quorum, so we're good.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you very much.